There you go. I hope everybody can see my slides now. And I teach virology. So I had the rather bizarre task of teaching virology in what I described the era of coronavirus. As you can all imagine, it was a fairly surreal experience. We cover everything in this subject, from what a virus is, how we classify it, how it gets inside a cell and replicates, the outcomes of that infection, how an immune response occurs and how viruses try and evade the immune response. I won't go through all of this, but right down to some medical virology. We picked HIV, veterinary virology, we picked foot and mouth disease viruses, and applied virology as gene therapy vectors or vaccines. And throughout this semester, I was acutely aware that this was almost the opportunity of a lifetime as a teacher, because students were learning about virology in what is probably a 1 in 100 or more year epidemic of a human infectious virulent viruses, the SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus. So throughout all my lectures, I updated content to be what was the latest information coming out about the virus. We literally saw this pandemic spread around the world and people's knowledge of it as it came to light. So the topic covers everything from what a virus is to how it replicates inside a cell, all the details of the basic molecular virology, and applications of virology. So a little bit of background of this subject. It's actually a fairly new subject. It was offered first in 2017, and it was offered as a subject exclusively available to Bachelor of Advanced Science, Infection and Immunity students. These are third year students. They're very high performing students. They have a very bespoke learning experience, and the program within the curriculum of this degree is also quite unique. They have research opportunities throughout second and third year, and they have subjects that are shared with other degrees, but they have subjects such as this one that is exclusively only offered to them. So I have had anything from 3 students in the first year to 12 students last year, which is clearly unsustainable. And I should be on full screen mode here. Sorry, everybody. Otherwise, there we go. Otherwise, the animations won't work. But it's now offered as a third year elective for biomedical science, biotechnology, and this year we even had some medical science students. So what I want to tell you about today is not so much the surreal nature of teaching this subject, but what I decided to do for the final exam. So prior to this year, we've always just had a pretty standard schedule exam. It's been an open book, restricted open book exam, so they're provided with some summary documents. It's normally a 2 hours plus 10-minute reading time, and the format is multiple choice questions and then 3 long answer questions, which they choose to answer from 6 options provided. But since we had such an unreal semester learning virology at the same time as coronavirus, I decided that that exam, A, I wanted to preserve it in case I did want to still use it, and B, that exam did not reflect some of the learning with respect to coronavirus. And I wanted to continue to use the opportunity of coronavirus in the exam, just as we had used it throughout the teaching in the semester. So I chose to have a scheduled exam because that means I could run it online. I chose to have it completely open book. So students have full access to all of their lecture notes, tutorial notes, any prac class notes. The textbook, it's a hard copy textbook. It's a little bit expensive, but it's a great textbook as a recommended text. And it's fortunately available as an e-resource in the library, so students could access that as well. They would have also therefore had access to anything on the internet. So they could go to PubMed, they could go to Google Scholar, and probably most importantly, they could go to any relevant website such as the World Health Organization, WHO, the Centers for Disease Control, any Australian government websites such as Department of Health, the TGA, Therapeutic Goods Administration, or any clinical trial registers, because there's been so many clinical trials for antiviral agents, for example, for treating coronavirus. The exam was offered online, and to compensate students for the fact that it's a little bit more time consuming and an unfamiliar format, I gave them an extra 10 minutes. Instead of just 2 hours, 10 minutes, they got 2 hours and 20 minutes, but there was no demarcation of strict reading time. They just got the whole time to do it. So what I want to do now is probably share my screen and share another screen. Okay, so the next thing I had to do was to actually write the exam. So what I did here was I sat down and I thought, okay, if I break this up into different topics that we've covered in the semester, they would be viral origins, viral transmission, viral containment, treatments, vaccines, basic virology, which is the main part of the exam, pathology, in other words, how does the virus actually cause the disease or the disease symptoms, and another significant area we've covered throughout the semester is the effects on society and ethics. So I wrote the exam, decided to, I really need 3 exams. So I wrote the exam, decided that the way I would build in this to prevent, I guess, what word would we use to be generous? Student collaboration. To do that, I built in extensive amount of choice. And I also start this semester, and I have done so for the last 3 years, but particularly relevant this year, with playing the movie Contagion in Virus 1. In week 1, sorry, Virus 1, week 1. So what I did was I said to the students, answer each section for one of these choices: coronavirus, the movie Contagion virus, or another virus. And for each section, I gave them a different range of choice. So in one example, it might be a choice between HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, hepatitis C virus, or maybe Ebola virus. And so I wrote the exam. I then copied it and made an alternate, copied it again and made a rescheduled. And the way I changed it would be certain questions, as highlighted here, would have certain elements of the same question change. So instead of the result of a recombination event, I might change that to the result of a mutation event. And so I could be asking a question about the same theoretical area, but with a slightly different focus. Therefore, my 3 copies of my exams were essentially equivalent. So I want to just share screen one more time now. Okay, I ran the exam in Zoom. I wrote the exam and then I thought, okay, I've got the idea, but I didn't have any clue how to actually execute this as an online exam. So I got in touch with the LX Lab and Maze was absolutely fantastic and helped me to get this online. So thank you, Maze. I want to acknowledge up front all the great work you've done to help me deliver this. So the instructions were put online for students. We also set up a small dummy exam of 3 questions so that they could familiarize themselves with the format. I also had numerous email opportunities for students to ask additional questions. I really wanted to try and alleviate any extra stress. And then this is how the exam ran. So we set it with a date, timed as well. We did it with a Zoom session online simultaneously, and I can do that because my class is only 20 students, so we don't have issues of very large student volumes. Just want to show you how the exam would run. My password was virus, and then this is how it ran. So the first section you had to answer with respect to the movie Contagion, so all the options were Contagion. So let's just pick one and then move to the next question. Oh, is it not going to run for me online? Try again. Okay. Now, I told you we started week 1 with playing the movie Contagion, so I embedded into the very first question the trailer. And so this will run full screen. I won't just give you a taste of it. I obviously won't run this whole thing. Can you hear that? No hear, no sound.
No, but I think I like the setup. So maybe if we just continue with
Yep. If you can't hear it, but it's quite dramatic. So you start the exam by watching the trailer of the movie, and most students have got their headphones on, so the stereo effects are really quite dramatic. And then we go through the questions. So the question will come in, then they type their answer and simply go to the next question. And every time we go to the next question, I just want to stay on page. Every time we go to the next question, we eventually get to the area where there's a new section of the exam, and they again have to choose which virus they want to answer the next section from. So in this case, I might choose HIV and then go to the next question. So in this way, there was built-in choice at every step of this exam. And what this did, sorry, what have I done there? I want to share screen again. And maybe I can't. Yes, I can. One more share screen. Okay, so the online exam worked extremely well, and they had a practice of 3 questions as well before that. So the question that we're all asking now is, did it work? Timing wise, yes, it worked very well. One student did not finish the exam in time, but they were given guidelines of aim to spend about 3 minutes per question. You still should have some extra time. The open book format was not so much to go and find answers, but rather you had the opportunity to remind yourself of things that you had learned throughout the semester. You know, you could look at specific answers if you wanted to. You should know where you can find them very quickly. The format was the main issue. It was completely new to students. And so sending them emails and messages about how you get to choose which virus to answer each section of the exam is the main issue for the students. It did create anxiety. I did have a number of emails coming back. 2 students in particular were a little bit unsure about this. They felt it might be unfair because they've learnt it in some other context and now they have to answer it with respect to whatever. But I've just reassured them that whatever knowledge they have, they can provide the answers. The questions were fairly open-ended. The other thing that it did was by creating choice, it impacts on marking. And I'm going to show you as my last share slide here how I did the marking. But it also, I think this is the main advantage of why I, in the end, really like what I've done here, if I can be so self-congratulatory, is it examines student knowledge rather than a question that just happens to be something they didn't remember, right? It really does examine their knowledge, their understanding of certain principles, and it decreases plagiarism. So would I do it again? Yes. And I just want to finish, I'm conscious of time, but I just want to finish by going back to one last share screen. Okay, so I can download this exam once it's completed. I have grayed out over here the student name and ID. That will be in the first 3 columns, SID, surname, first name. And then here are the answers. I can put the score for each question here. And then as I mark it, I can put the scores here and total them. And so the impact, of course, with anything that's at this sort of level is that there's a higher degree of involvement from the assessor to mark it. So I did have to sit there and, you know, scroll through all of these and mark them one at a time and get my totals. But it was great reading, actually, because I got a chance to really see, you know, what students knew and all the knowledge and how they'd applied it to the topics that we'd learned in class. And I just want to, if I can scroll to the very, I probably didn't remember to highlight it. But my last question was, RNA viruses should be regulated in terms of research. Discuss. So, you know, that's a pretty open-ended question, but the answers that I got in that is exactly the higher level of understanding that I wanted students to reflect back in terms of virology knowledge and impact on society and ethics that's involved in studying, I guess, human pathogens. So that's really what I wanted to share with you all today. Again, I really just want to acknowledge Mais's help. You know, I had the idea about how to run the exam. I could only work out how to do it as a written exam. Put a Word document up online, get them to download it, fill it in, send it back to me. But I really didn't want to put the whole document out there for students then. You know, I couldn't use it again in other years very easily. And so Mais's help and her team in working out how to upload it into the quiz section in Blackboard was just invaluable. So thank you very much, Mais, and to the rest of your team. And I'm happy to answer any questions at the end of the session. But that's virology in the era of coronavirus.
Great, that's fantastic. I love seeing the example and how it actually worked in Blackboard. It's really great.